Stick on. You guys figured that out yet?
Cocktail hour. Let's go.
We're gonna have to, aren't we? Just trying to respect the position here. But
their attorney-client privilege, and they billed us for the goddamn thing. On top of everything else, they billed me for a service I didn't ask for. They violated my trust with it.
I can tell you.
I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Bellows Falls Union High School School Board meeting. Called to order. Is there any adjustments to the agenda? We've got a couple. We're gonna take 9D and move it up underneath communication and public comments. And we're going to put 9C after art and music department for department presentations. We are removing board roles and responsibilities. We have put it on the Union High School Drive, so if anybody wants to look at that. Anything else?
Nope, that's covered it.
Review and approve board minutes for April 8th. They're in your packet. Anybody have any adjustments? It was a very short meeting.
Not much to
It should go down in history.
Right.
Okay, all those in favor of approving board minutes for April 8th, please say aye.
Aye.
Communication and public comments. I think you're on the agenda after the art department presentation. Thank you. There are no policies.
Policies are still being reviewed. The policies we're looking at were conflict of interest policy, weapons, wellness policy. There's one more, but I can't recall it, so
Okay.
we should have something for the next board meeting.
Our next item is department presentations. If Chris
So
would
let me give a
introduce.
little lead in to our art and music department presentation. So again, as most of you know, although there are some folks that are new to the board since we came up with this plan for department presentations, we've been progressing somewhat regularly through presentations by departments. We've had math, we've had English, we've had social studies. Nick Pelton is the coordinator for what you could refer to as the electives. We think of it as everything else, but all of those everything else really have their own curriculum and could be a presentation unto itself. So the kind of collected decision that we made is there's of those, and I am not making a value statement on band, our music department, our art department, family consumer science, phys ed, tech ed. These all are kind of overseen by Nick, but they're kind of mini departments unto themselves. And so what I suggested was, because our music program and our art program has so much visibility within the community, it made the most sense to at least start there. And if you want us to come back and tell you what's happening in phys ed and family consumer science and tech ed, then we can do that too. But for the sake of maintaining a reasonable focus with a reasonable amount of information to work with, we decided to start here. So without further ado, Nick, they're all yours.
All right, Nick Pelton. This is my 8th year here at Bellows Falls Union High School, instrumental music teacher, and my colleague.
I'm Anna Majeski. This is my 2nd year as the full-time art teacher here at BFUHS.
And we just have a brief video that we put together just to give you a sense of some of the student outcomes, some of the student work here. Without further ado. was Dat Dare by Bobby Timmons, performed by our jazz ensemble, and from the concert band of the piece entitled Vesuvius by Frank Kelly. And so those were concert recordings from our spring concert. So I just want to briefly talk about the progression of what I'm teaching in the band throughout the year. So the concert band is the primary class that I teach, and as that class is offered split between period 5 and period 6. It's the second half of our third block in the day. In addition to that, throughout the day, I'm teaching. I work a little bit in small groups with students from our life skills program, and throughout the remainder of the day, I'm doing a pull-out lesson program. So band is offered as a year-long 1-credit class. It's an unleveled course. However, we offer a tiered option for students to earn either level 3 or level 4 credit for the course. I'll just speak briefly to, so for the academic level 3, students are required to complete a semester project that I outline with them, and that's usually, it comes in the form of studying a major solo piece for their instrument. Oftentimes that's tied to some sort of audition, and I'll speak more to those opportunities later, as well as one of the following from this list, either taking private lessons, an additional music course within the school year, pursuing one of those auditions, whether it be districts, all New England's, or all state level. Another option is to complete some service on behalf of the music department. As you can imagine, there's a lot of work in the library and equipment and things like that that students can take on. And then for the level 4, for the honors level, it's all of that criteria outlined, as well as advanced, we sort of summarize it as advanced involvement in the music department. And typically that happens, it has happened to this point in 2 ways, although there's a third option, which is one is a leadership position, and the other one is a display of scholarship, and it's usually in the past that has culminated in some sort of student recital. So we've had a number of like honors recitals where students have put on a full concert, everything from the advertising and the programming to actually putting together, somewhere between a half an hour to an hour per solo performance, or maybe some small ensembles in there. And we also offer an opportunity, this is the part we haven't really done much of yet, is doing some sort of research project or composition, which is sort of a long-term goal that's sort of written in there, something we haven't really gotten into yet. Throughout the year, students are studying a broad range of concert music literature, and I sort of summarize that into 4 major units. I loosely use units because they don't fit perfectly within like a sequential formation of the year, and which will make sense when I talk about that. So, and those are so the parade and pep music, our concert literature, we do a chamber music unit, and then what I summarize is service music. So we always start our year in the fall, and we're typically popular music selections. Oftentimes themes of like either decades or television and cartoon melodies or pop rock artists, things like that. And those are that we often begin that even actually a few days. We do a preseason band to kind of get things in motion, dust off the cobwebs before the school year begins. Oftentimes we have 2 days of class, 3 days of class, and we've got a pep rally and a football game on Friday night. So it gets those things in motion, and then that way our first class, which is about 40 minutes, could easily be taken up without even playing a note, with just getting things in motion. So there's a lot of good reasons for that. So within that parade and pep music, often I'm selecting literature, often based on those themes, but also trying to really kind of select things that focus on specific literacy concepts. That's sort of the overarching goal, is to want students to walk away with being literate musicians. So left to their own devices, they have a really strong skill set playing their instrument and reading music, with whatever context they choose, beyond high school. So a lot of times those literacy selections are focused on specific meter and rhythmic concepts, articulation, forms, things like that. And I, at this point, I'm really trying to get the diverse range of students entering in that room, from the first semester freshman with a limited prior band experience to the student who's really, college bound on a music track, playing in the same ensemble. So oftentimes the instructional approach at that point is a real blend of anything from rote teaching to really having more student-centered leader opportunities there. Our concert literature, as you can imagine, is a huge core part of that, and that culminates in our big semester concerts in December and April. In addition to those concerts, we also do some outreach events that we've made part of our annual calendar, which is included in that packet if you want to see kind of the sequence of the year. So we do after our December concert, we go down to the Bellas Middle School. We do a presentation for them in our formal concert attire and present a portion of that program, just to make sure that those students are exposed to this is what's happening at Bellas Union High School. And oftentimes that's a big catalyst, and I have a lot of kids and I interact with it, district auditions and informal opportunities, and they're, I'm really excited for the high school band. I heard you guys play. So I think that's an important component of our progression. And then thing we've only successfully done twice, but we hope to make more of a regular part of our annual cycle is the combined band concert. So hosting that in the gym here. We have all grade levels that have a band program in WNESU. We invite them to come out. The elementary groups, they all play a selection, and all the way through the middle school advanced band, all in each of the high school bands. So we have a jazz ensemble, which is a club, the concert band, and this year we actually ran a wind ensemble as well. So the whole range of ensembles perform all the way through the progression, and then we make a mass band. I think we're at somewhere about 120 students collectively performing this year, and we did in a selection, and that's the finale for the concert. And that's, again, for those young tykes, as you can imagine, playing with the high schoolers is a real big deal, and they you can see really the enthusiasm and really see them light up. So throughout our concert literature, that's throughout that portion. That's where I'm really pushing student literacy. You can see in there's some material in that packet I gave you about practice journaling. So really focusing on how, left to your own devices, when I first started teaching, I would hear from kids, yeah, I practiced. I went home, took my instrument out, I played through the music. Okay, what got better? I don't know, right? So really focusing on literacy skills and strategies and problem solving and how to go about working on those things. And that's been a really core part of what I'm trying to promote with the students. And the teacher-directed part of that, in addition to those literacy skills and technique acquisition on their instrument, really working to integrate in that process, obviously, is the interpretive part of that, and making that a regular part of, or we're not just playing a bunch of notes and patterns here, we're actually trying to communicate it with feelings, emotions, tell a story with the music, so on and so forth. And then in that process of the concert literature, we find opportunities through each of those concerts to feature outstanding seniors selected, basically, obviously their work ethic, their skills that they've developed, their various accolades for various honors ensembles. So we've been doing that pretty regularly on each semester concert featuring an outstanding member of the band. This fall we featured student Ian Wallace on the trombone, who just completed his second year at the All-State Music Festival. And in the spring concert we featured Brady Harris, who in addition to 3 years at All-State had I think 2 years at All New England's as well. Our winter unit, we start in early January, lasts somewhere around 6 weeks, is our chamber music unit. And that's where the student leadership is a core part of that. Students are broken into small groups, largely by instrument. I coach those student leaders through the planning of what the rehearsal process is going to look like, strategies to employ, techniques to work through all of the literature, and they're really left to their own devices in a lot of rehearsals to really step up and take ownership of that rehearsal process. And it's just absolutely amazing to see what they come up with on their own. And I think that really leads us to that final unit of the year, which is our service music. So this is where we're at right now. We're about to go out and perform for Memorial Day services, which has evolved into a really nice performance. It's more of a standing concert performance down at the Waypoint Center. We're actually looking this year where both the middle school and the high school ensembles are expanding that to be a longer concert program, so performing more music literature for that. In addition to that, we obviously have a class night and graduation performances, and then we end our year with the Alumni Day Parade. And that one is really about service to the community and that connection for the work that they're doing in the music, and just continuing to develop and apply the skills that we've really dug into deeply throughout the year. So, and then in terms of the next part of our presentation is. There's one component before I hand it off to Anna. So in that packet there, in terms of, again, going to the progression. So one question you may have is, for students in band for 4 years, if you're in math, you would go from, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and so on and so forth. There's a progression of courses. Well, currently, as we stand, we have really one course. It's the concert band. So in this, you can see I've got a nice progression here. It's like bite-sized chunks of technical development for either a melodic instrument or a percussionist, and there's plenty of room to grow. And it ends with level G, which is really some college level material where students can dig in, and they could, if a student got there at their sophomore year, say, really early on, to that level, it's written in such a way that they can dig deeper and get further, and there's plenty of growing room and to keep them moving forward. So they're not kind of beating a dead horse, so to speak, and doing the same thing over and over. So I'll hand it off to Anna.
All right, let me just make a little switcheroo here on the visuals. Alright, so I'm going to get a little bit into the visual art curriculum here. The kind of entry point for any student wanting to explore the visual arts here is our Art 1 course. It's also a prerequisite for basically every other art course we offer here. And the Art 1 curriculum focuses on kind of the basic elements of art and principles of art, which are outlined here. The elements of art: line, shape, value, form, color, texture, and space are kind of the basic building blocks that you use to create a piece of artwork. And the principles of art listed there are kind of how you put all those pieces together to create a cohesive piece of artwork. So the way I typically structure the semester in Art 1 is we kind of work through the different elements of art as a unit. So we'll start typically with the line unit, because it's the most basic element of art. And there are definitely plenty of exercises that go on before we get to this point. But I just wanted to kind of show the summative projects that we do in each unit so you get a sense. We focus on the element of art, and I try to deal in with each new larger project a principle of art too. So here we're focusing on line. As you can see, these are observational drawings, a still life with emphasis. So the focus in drawing these objects was to get the main contours or lines of the objects. Ideally, students were to vary the line width based on the depth of field for particular objects, as well as shadows. And they were to pick one item or a group of items to then add color to add emphasis or a focal point to the piece. From line, we'd typically move on to shape, and this is a favorite project here, our watercolor silhouettes. So without getting into too much inside detail in an object or shading or modeling or anything like that, it just gives the shape gives a more solid object into a piece of artwork rather than just an outline. And with the shape element, we also employed the principle of contrast, having a really stark, dark black focal point, and then a really bright, colorful background. From shape, then we'd go on to value and form. This was our M.C. Escher inspired value drawing, which was kind of the summation of our value unit. For anyone who's not familiar with M.C. Escher, a lot of his artwork focuses on value, black and white, grayscale value, and a lot of different interesting optical illusions, perspective shifts, differences in scale, and also the sense of infinity you'll see with the snake. The infinite snake, that's a common theme in his work. So it was a really fun and interesting way for kids to employ the elements of value and form that they learned while incorporating principles of balance and proportion. So beyond Art 1, previous to my teaching here, there was really only 2 art courses, Art 1 and Advanced Art. But in my teaching here, I found that that kind of leaves some holes. In Art 1, beyond the basic elements and principles of design, we do dabble in a variety of different media, but there's been a lot of student interest in exploring different media in more depth. So I've worked with the guidance department and administration to add 4 new courses to the roster, which I'll get into more detail about later on in the presentation. But the way I see the progression through the art program moving forward would be students would take Art 1 to start and at least one other art class before moving on to Advanced Art. And I know a lot of kids, we have an incredibly talented group of freshmen this year. I see a lot of kids taking all of these and still wanting more. So moving on from that, our proficiencies for Art 1, the art standard proficiencies are broken up into different categories of creating, presenting, connecting, and responding. For visual art, the bulk of my proficiencies fall into the creating category. And here's just a few examples of ones we may cover in Art 1. First one, create a coherent composition through integration of lines, which you saw illustrated in our student examples, using a broad range of contrasting value in a variety of media, using color quality such as tint, shade, and intensity, so different colors, building on previous knowledge and transferring previous knowledge to new media and techniques, which I really try to structure the curriculum to progress in a logically sequential way so kids can really build as they go along, and then persevering to complete quality work to a student's personal best. All right, and from there, I'm going to hand it off to Nick for his proficiencies.
So I gave this in the packet there if you'd like to look at it. So within the band program, I'm assessing students again on the practice journaling is an integral part of what we're doing. There's a performance assessment rubric that really breaks down a performance of, say, a solo piece or a piece of concert literature that we're studying, and I would ultimately be assessing a student on. And what I deem as our proficiencies are really what I see as essential skills. Performing that assigned technical material, scales and arpeggios, assigned ensemble music, as well as posture and instrument carriage, an important part of the technical parts of playing an instrument, and playing technique. That really applies to percussionists as well as winds. Respond to the cues of the conductor. That's obviously an integral part of ensemble musicianship, and we're talking and associating gesture and conducting pattern and things like that with the performance aspects of what we're doing on a regular basis. Playing in tone, so I say in tone and in tune, so student has to develop a characteristic tone and ultimately a mature level of tone on their instrument, as well as the intonation aspect of that. Those things are very integrated, and then adjusting balance and blend and ensemble performance, and that's that's the not my own sound but our sound component of the ensemble. So those are again, those are all the categories in there, in addition to the breakdown of the performance rubric. And then the next thing we'd like to speak briefly to, where we feel our areas of strength for our respective areas. And so I think in the band, a good important question is, how are we serving kids that are really high achieving as musicians, are students that maybe are even going beyond and pursuing a college career. So things, giving them opportunities for honors festivals and helping them connect them with professional musicians for private lessons beyond our program here, connecting them with summer music programs, again, the senior solo features that we talked about, connecting to in just general music opportunities in the greater community, whether it's Main Street Arts or Springfield Community Players. The Springfield Community Band is another one that I direct, that I have a number of students involved in, those sorts of things. And so some things, important student outcomes we feel are really a good measure for those successes. And so this year in particular, we had for the district, so we're the Southeastern Regional District for the state of Vermont under the umbrella of the Vermont Music Education Association. And for that district, District 6, we had 20 students of the, it's about somewhere around 80 students, I think, that get accepted, or 70 students that get accepted into the district concert band. We had 20 students accepted into that this year. In the district jazz ensemble.
And how many schools does that draw from, roughly speaking?
Well, I don't know the total number, but it spans as far north as Hartford, White River, and heads down as far as like Manchester area.
The important takeaway is 20 out of 70 or so.
Yeah, that might actually be. I think it may be like 60. Sorry,
Yeah.
my numbers are a little skewed.
We are at our math presentation already a few months ago, but just rest assured that we are well represented in those elite performing opportunities, particularly relative to schools 2 or 3 times our size. Yeah. So,
yeah, Terriers dominate on
For
and
sure.
off the field. In the district jazz ensemble this year, we had 2 students, and we don't have a curricular opportunity for that yet. Get to that. But we had 2 students accepted to that. That's usually an ensemble of about 18 players, one on a part.
Yep.
And then all-state band this year, we had 4 instrumentalists in the band, and then 3 students in the all New England band this year. And our jazz ensemble, which is currently again a club. We've got consistent interest in that. We've got right now I think 19 players. No, we added a new student. We have 20. We have a bass player now, which I'm thrilled about. We have 20 players in that ensemble. This year, this is my 8th year doing a musical production, collaborating with Katie Emond here, and we've evolved from my very first show. I was talking to Anne about this earlier. When we did Phantom of the Opera, we hired I think every single musician in there. To this year, where aside from our collaborative pianist, it was all fully student pit, which I'm particularly proud of. I think that really is a barometer. I mean, playing a Broadway book
That's
is
huge.
a substantial undertaking, and our students just absolutely work their butts off, and it's a tremendous accomplishment.
some of them have lip issues at the end of that week.
Yeah.
But Molly will get over that.
Yeah.
Embouchure.
Yes. And then we're seeing students, just like I said before, getting out there and engaging in community music opportunities. And I just want to highlight some. We have had some recent graduates since I've been here. Emily Vaccaro was one of the first ones I saw from the band program. Has got a music degree from Keene State. Tim Jones just about a year ago graduated with a bachelor's degree in jazz studies from the Hart School of Music, Jackie McLean Institute of Jazz. Sam Empey, UNH Musical Theater, Matthew Chapin, and Poe Terena are both at SUNY Fredonia. It's actually my alma mater from my master's degree. Are both there. Actually, Poe is actually, when we had the President's Own Marine Band, which will never happen in my life, we were so fortunate to host that here. It was a tremendous undertaking with loads of support from these gentlemen. And loads of folks across the school. But anyway, that was a big catalyst for Poe. And ever since we had that experience here, he dug in and practiced hours and hours and hours and hours every day and said, I want to be in the Marine Band. He's a Marine now, and he's getting a music degree. So I'm excited to see where that all goes. Christian Terry is currently at Keene State getting a music education degree. And 2 seniors this year, Brady Harris and Sky Swan, are going off to do various things musically. Brady will be getting a degree at Nazareth in music therapy, pursuing a degree in music therapy, and Sky Swan will be doing 2 audio and music engineering degrees at the University of Hartford. So those are some things I thought was important to share. Anna.
All right. So I haven't had as long to rack up the accomplishments as Nick, but I still have some lovely things to
She's
share.
getting there.
It's only my 2nd year. Keep that in mind. All right. So I'm going to share the strengths of our art department in the form of a few different art shows that we participated in. So the Bellas Falls Women's Club Art Show is a show we do here in the school every spring. This is my second year being involved with that. The Bellas Falls Women's Club sponsors some prizes for different students. This year we had, I believe, 8 categories of submissions. We had watercolor, acrylic painting, drawing, photography, book arts, printmaking, ceramics, and sculpture. And we had a great showing for all of those. For such a small school, we had a lot of art. Those of you who were there can attest to that. Well over 100 pieces of artwork. And within that, the Women's Club comes to see the art. Our Family Consumer Science department puts on a fabulous lunch. And our band and chorus also put on a little performance for them. So it's a really fun way for students to have members of the community also come in and see their art, maybe not just their parents, get a little recognition, and it's a great way for us to show the community what we're doing here.
And the Women's Club, from what I'm told, it's one of the highlights of their, annual schedule. So they have their meeting here. And
Absolutely. I certainly enjoyed it as part of the Women's Club. It was a wonderful event.
It's one of my favorite days of the year, too.
Yeah.
Super fun. From there, we participated in a few different regional art shows beyond our school. In the fall, we participated in the Castleton University Arts Engagement Day and Art Competition. Basically, it's a juried show. They select certain student artwork to be shown at Castleton University. We didn't get any fancy awards, but we did have, I believe, 9 students have art displayed at the show. And we had 3 students pictured there that went with me to the Arts Engagement Day, where we got a tour of the facilities at Castleton University, got a chance to see what they can offer if you're interested in pursuing art further. We had a really cool visiting artist talk, and we were able to get involved with the drawing and collage workshop. So it's a really fun Arts Engagement Day at Castleton University. We also had students selected to show their artwork at the Norwich University Juried High School Art Show. Again, we didn't get any awards, but we did have 11 students showing art, some multiple pieces, and it was a fairly small selection of work from a lot of different schools. So it was an honor just to be selected, and it was a good way to get students' artwork out there, and again, see what a Vermont school can offer in terms of an arts education after high school. And then we also had a great showing at the Congressional Art Show. We had 5 students with artwork in the Congressional Art Show this year, 5 seniors. 5 is the maximum you can submit per school. So that was a great showing. And our resident superstar, Emily Wonderly, there in the middle, took home a Congressman's Choice Award for her self-portrait. That means that Congressman Welsh kind of handpicked her piece of artwork for an award, which is really cool and a nice honor. So we're bringing back some awards for the school, hopefully more in the future. Move on to challenges. I haven't had a ton of challenges. The one challenge that I've faced mostly is that a lot of students, obviously we have some superstars always, but a lot of students come in with kind of a lower prior content knowledge or skill level than I would anticipate at the high school level. And I think now that I've settled in a little bit more, I'd like to try to collaborate more with other art teachers in the district to see if we can facilitate a more cohesive and sequential K through 12 art curriculum, to just kind of see what we can do to, make a better program. I'm not sure what other people are doing, but just figuring out what we can do across the board to make everyone, work better. Looking towards the future, for me here at the high school, I mentioned earlier that I'm offering 4 new art classes. I'll just briefly touch on each of those. First one is ceramics. We have a small ceramics unit within the Art 1 course, but it's everybody's favorite and everyone wants to get more ceramics in, so we're going to offer a fully dedicated ceramics course. In Art 1, we only touch on hand building and ceramics, but this course will get into more advanced hand building as well as some wheel throwing, which is really fun, and we'll be able to get into more advanced decorating techniques and stuff, so that'll be really fun for kids. We're going to have an intermediate drawing and painting course, which will kind of bridge the gap that I see between Art 1 and Advanced Art, because those both focus primarily on two-dimensional arts. And we'll get to delve into more different media like pastels, watercolor, acrylic paint, and in more depth than we would in Art 1. Then we have a book and paper arts, which is another fun unit. I've been doing handmade books and altar books, which is one of the categories in the art show that I mentioned. And a lot of students have really gotten into that. And I also introduced more printmaking into Art 1 this year, which people really love. And those two art forms kind of go hand in hand. So this course will get into a lot of printmaking techniques as well as other paper artwork and handmade books. And then a mindfulness through art course, which is less focused on like a creative outcome for presentation. It's more on the creative process, which should be really fun. And then beyond that, potential future courses that there's been student interest in that we'll look into maybe offering in the future are an AP Studio Art and Photography. Those are our top two that kids are really interested in. There's also some interest in a sculpture or a digital illustration and graphic design class, or an art history class potentially, working with our humanities department. Potential future clubs and activities, looking into opening a branch of the National Art Honor Society at our school for next year maybe. There's been a lot of interest in starting a knitting club. And for other activities, a lot of students have expressed interest in designing murals for a lot of the empty space around the school. Having more community art shows where we showcase student artwork out in the community at local businesses or galleries outside of just the school. What I'd like to see in the future is having around graduation time, which I know is a really busy time, but I think it'd be fun to have a showcase just for our super talented seniors, potentially showing concentrations from their advanced art course. And it'd be really fun to see if they chose a piece of artwork from each year they were in high school to kind of see their growth and progression. And in addition to that, I'd love to be able to organize more field trips to art museums. There's a lot locally and pretty close within New England that would be really enriching for students. And also I'd love to orchestrate some visiting artist workshops with students as well, because we have quite a wealth of talented artists here in southern Vermont that it'd be fun to work with. And that's the end for me, so I'll hand it off to you.
All right. Similar to what Anna spoke to, is I'd like to see greater collaboration and see that we can align some of our things, and really I think alignment of a common vision in the music department. You know, as you can imagine, there's a bit of autonomy in terms of, you know, we're in the individual oftentimes in our building. You know, here we have a team of two, but trying to really collaborate across the board and try to have a common vision in our music department. I often have, you know, I'd really like to see us move in this direction, or I really like to see us develop a jazz program in the curriculum. Well, it's easy to say that without it being something that's coming from the elementary and middle school programs. So I'd like to do a better job of that. I think we've taken steps in that direction. I've developed some great rapport with my colleagues at the other schools, and I've had the opportunity to go out and observe. I spent some time at the middle school building relationships with the upcoming students. I'm mentoring the teacher at Westminster Center School right now, so I'm able to engage with her. And we're doing like I said, our outreach performance at the middle school. We're doing our WNHU combined band concert, but I think there's more we can do, and that's something that I'm actively working on. I've been speaking with Chris Hodgson about, you know, maybe what we'll set up as a, you know, in using some of our in-service time to have quarterly, regularly scheduled meetings throughout the school year. We can come together and align some of those visions for the future and growth, and continue to collaborate and setting more clearly defined benchmarks along the way. So that way when students get to the high school, we're seeing a core of skills, a core of knowledge that's really been assessed and more universally approached within our district. And I'd like to even take that a step further and again go when I've been going down and visiting the other schools, is maybe even get in something we can maybe talk about in our, maybe not officially in our supervision and evaluation process, but at the very least having my colleagues come up and observe me and give me some feedback as a music teacher. specifically. I would love that. So some things I'm going to work toward with them, whether that's an official thing or not. It's something I'd like to see, and I think that would have a lot of merit. Something that I think is been a real challenge. We've seen a real decline in our choral program in recent years, and I think that we're not seeing the numbers of students come up with choral instruction from our middle school, and I think that there's some room to maybe get that back in the regular school day and support that. I think that is incredibly important. We've felt that in our choral program here, curricular, as well as our musical production. Students coming in with a sincere interest in music and singing, but not the skills and not the background and the instructional part of that. So I'd love to see if we can move forward with that. And we're going to be very soon actually be hiring our next choral teacher here at Bellows Falls High School. So other things I spoke to briefly. So in terms of curriculum things, so we have some room to grow in terms of that. A couple of years ago, the Vermont adopted the core arts standards, and the strands for that. So presenting, creating, connecting, and responding. We do a lot of things in presenting, as you can see from our calendar. There's a lot of musical presentation and performance that happens throughout the year. Connecting those things and responding to those things are very natural in the process. The creation part of it, I think, is going back to this vision and this alignment across the WNSU music programs. That's something that I think there's tremendous potential to really motivate students, but also catch up to what is everyone else doing universally in our music programs across the country, and that's current. So my first step in that at the high school here is next year we're gonna run a jazz ensemble. I've already been sort of grooming some students and getting their interest and talking about that a little bit with them, and we're gonna move forward with that. As I said, with the club jazz ensemble, there's been all 8 years. It keeps getting stronger. The interest is there. There's no doubt. So now we need to dig deeper and offer it in a structured curricular way, and really get into the creation part of that, and that's jazz improvisation. And that's the universal language, I think, and a universal approach that really kind of spans all music genre in terms of the instructional outcomes of that. Students will learn a tremendous body of skills that can take them in any different path as a musician. Another thing that I think is really important at this point as we move forward in the hiring process is that we start to really move forward and infuse our elective opportunities. Right now, if you come to high school and you have not had significant ensemble music experience, whether that's choral, instrumental, and you want to engage in those experiences, it's pretty limited how to do that. It's difficult. Don't get me wrong, we've had students do that through our instrumental instruction opportunity, which is a course that we can schedule them for. But it's as you can imagine, starting from square one and getting to that level of playing in a high school music ensemble. So I think there's some ways we can bridge that gap in terms of offering some piano class, multi-tiered piano class. Again, reaching those higher level learners. Music theory. We haven't been getting a lot of students enrolled in music theory. There's an AP offering that I'd like to evolve to eventually, and I can affirm that there are definitely students that want to take those opportunities. So I'd like to see us offer that, and we'll see where that takes us in terms of seeing more students engage in the music department is a real goal that I see. And then related to that, and I think this is a difficult one, I'll try to be brief on it, but reaching out to students that from, say, Wethersfield or Black River, things like that, and letting them know she's doing great stuff in the art department. There's great things happening in the music department. I can speak to that. And we got to get the word out. I think this video is one way to do that and attract those students here, but I think that's going to allow us some other opportunities. You see how busy our calendar is throughout the year. one thing I try to be sensitive to, I'm trying not to go on a tangent here, is student burnout with a number of things. If we have one curricular ensemble and we've got a laundry list of performances throughout the school year, students that in a small school population that are juggling many things, many high achieving students. I want to be sensitive to that. So as we can kind of bolster our numbers in the program and we can offer a higher level ensemble experience, and then in addition to the concert band and the jazz ensemble, then that we can see these ensembles going out into the community and engaging in these opportunities, and it kind of lightens the load for the students a little bit in terms of those community engagement pieces. So it's something I want to collaborate with John Broadley on and do a little better job from my perspective, because I do reach out within our district and go build relationships, but I think I can do more. So that's what I have to say. Thank you for listening. Are there questions that anybody would like to ask for us? I know we're severely over time.
I would hope that perhaps we could come back again and just talk about some of this, because arts education is an area where a lot of us see challenges and need to address them in terms of the curriculum K through 12. And I'd like to talk to you. I have a limited time here tonight, so I'm not going to ask any beyond that, but I really would like to get into it in a little bit more depth.
Absolutely.
Real
Thank you
quick,
both.
you talked about more getting exposure to the community. One thing I was thinking when you were saying that is maybe next year, I know the end of the year, school year is very busy for everybody, but maybe get a hold of starting next year, get a hold of the Alumni Association, and you could maybe do like a tour of artwork being presented. A lot of alums come back home and they sure would be interested in that. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
One thing when we do talk again, I do want to talk about outreach, because I'm delighted we have as many kids doing what we do. But I have this pamphlet from the West Lebanon High School in 1953, and they were complaining that only 70% of their kids knew how to read music with proficiency. And I would like to know what our number is, and I don't think it's quite that good, especially since we had 3 kids come, recent graduates, who we had to explain what quarter notes were, and that sounds like maybe there's some we've got some gaps.
Yes, music literacy. Yeah, there's. I just read an article on that recently, and that's a severe decline, I think, nationally.
Question. I understand you are looking for new choral music?
Yep, we've got that advertised. Actually, we'll probably be doing interviews within the week or so.
Okay, so that will be for next year?
For next year, yep. Miss Westbrook is retiring.
Yes, David?
Thanks, Molly. It's a kind of, I think, an open-ended question to administration and the department. I heard you mention a recruiting effort possibly with other schools. Does that mean bringing students into this building as full-time members of our school community?
They mentioned a couple of schools in particular
I heard those.
that John has recently gone to and kind of played up a range of opportunities here, not the least of which are the art and music opportunities.
Black River closes when?
Not this year, but the following year. Not this.
June 2020 is their last graduation.
Thank you.
And I was there a week ago on Thursday, all afternoon presenting, and there's a lot of needy students, and many were interested in our arts programs. That's one of the big sellers. So
Yeah, and I'm able to engage with those students at district auditions and things. I'm often an adjudicator, and I get to start to get familiar with those students. So I like to take it several steps further.
Well, if I can just follow that very briefly with a comment, I want to let you know how extremely impressed I am by your presentation here, and it's just another feather in the cap of BFUHS. This is a very high-performing small high school, and it makes me proud to sit on this board.
You put quality and talented students together with high quality and talented instructors, and crazy good things happen.
We're seeing that all the time, Chris.
This is for both of you. I said I wasn't going to ask questions, but here I am. I know. One of the things that I'll be interested in future discussions is needs. Obviously, we had it presented to us in no uncertain terms that silos and a lack of a coherent K through 12 was an issue. You brought that up. I'm also wanting to know how we get, want to see some planning, and I think you guys should be leading it because you have expectations as to what comes in the door, and they need to be met. And the other is what you need in terms of physical support. Obviously, you need somebody capable of teaching a choral group and perhaps broadly basic singing 101. But I'm also wondering about facilities. A number of schools have what they call dirty art space for ceramic sculpture, that kind of stuff, and I don't see where that fits here right now, and I'd like to know how we could make that fit. So, and what you need in terms of kilns. You want to have a ceramics program. What do you have? I have no idea.
We have a very small kiln, and we have 2 electric pottery wheels, and the rest is done hand built. We have like one corner of the art room where all the clay
Get
stuff
somebody
is.
on a bicycle. I mean, how are you doing this?
Squirrels.
It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
You know.
Okay, but as I said, that's a later. But I do want to build on this conversation.
For sure. Sweet.
Great job.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we got one thing we ought to do before Jack has to leave. 9D,
Thank you.
approve going out to bid to borrow funds for cash flow purposes. Edie?
Yes, we would like to get a line of credit to get us through the summer months in the amount of $450,000. We only take what we need, therefore we only pay interest on what we take. And it's because our money from this year doesn't all come in until the middle to the end of September. So it does create a cash flow problem.
I would like to offer a motion, Molly, and my motion is to authorize the opening of a line of credit of up to $450,000 to meet the anticipated summer cash flow needs.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of authorizing a line of credit of $450,000 to be borrowed for cash flow purposes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Good luck
And
at
it's
your next
off.
meeting.
Yeah.
We
Thank you
are
all
going
for
to
moving
go
up.
to Pipelines and Pathways Program.
Is there someplace you'd prefer us to stand? We unfortunately don't have as nice a
Right up there is perfect.
as our previous group. So my name is Alex Beck, and I'm the Workforce and Education Program Manager with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. This is my colleague, Christy Beatty. A quick overview, some of you may know of our organization. We are the Regional Economic Development Organization for the county. You may also have heard of CEVEDS, which is an affiliate organization of ours. We ask all of the towns in Windham County for support for CEVEDS every year at Town Meeting Day. So a great example of what CEVEDS does was when we first started working with Bellows Falls Union High School, it was very limited, and what we could provide the school was also limited. We were operating off of one Department of Labor grant, and it wasn't much. With the support of CEVEDS and the towns that we're a part of, we were able to raise money to hire Christy, and we have this new program for 5 years, and it's funded. So that's just a short story as to how we try and grow and do more every year. And so what we did was started this program that we're calling Pipelines and Pathways. We called it that because employers, the private sector, they talk about employment pipelines. That's their language. Act 77 talks about career pathways. And what we really saw was employers and schools, or, were kind of missing each other in the middle with this language and how they talk about career education. So this program is really all about supporting all of our high schools in Windham County as they approach and tackle Act 77 as it relates to career awareness and career education. There's two components to it. One is what we're sharing. So we're developing shared resources for everyone in the county. And Christy will pass this out. A good example of this is when we met with each of the respective high schools, regardless of how well they were doing what they were working on.
Thank you.
They all said there wasn't one unifying picture of what career education could look like from start to finish. And so the first thing we really started working on was meeting with all of the counselors in all of the high schools and saying, what's the biggest picture you can give us? And so this is an example of part of one of the products of this work, and this is what a parent resource would look like. So doing this research, what does career education mean? When should it happen? This would be for parents. We're going to turn this into a poster similar to the ones you see like around the classroom for counselors to bring with them. And we're going to turn it into a tool that complements the personalized learning plan. So, I think that the previous presenters gave a really great visual of why progression is important. We can't just expect our graduates to just have everything. You really need to work longer term to do some of that career awareness, career education, and preparation. So that's what we're all sharing together as a county, and this came from researching and meeting with all the counselors. Some other things, and Christy will talk more about how we help fill some of these. We're not just saying here's what should be done, good luck doing it. Christy will talk about how we'll help with that. But the other thing that we're doing, which is unique to every school, is we're really have been meeting with your counseling department and saying, what's your need in terms of Act 77, personalized learning plans, and what can we help you do better? And so for Bellows Falls, we've been working closely with Mark Ebo, and he came to us and said, personalized learning plans are kicking off. We need help with a resume workshop. And so we put together a resume workshop, and we helped to make sure that every single student in Bellows Falls went through this workshop. Last year we did, I think, all the students, and then this year we did the freshman class. And so the plan is now every freshman year, last year it was me, next year it'll be Christy, getting some real face time and helping Mark do all the other things, and the counseling department do all the other things they're doing really well.
So that resume writing is one of we basically have quarterly activities that go along with our PLP, and once this gets kind of in place, it is the next ninth grade that needs to come in to really be engaged in that, and the ones that have already done it, their activity for that quarter is really going back and revising and updating. And it may seem like for folks that have been in the work world for a while, maybe not all that challenging a task, but if you think back to being a high school student who doesn't have a lot to add to it, it really does take some support to pull that off. And when it comes time for you then to apply for your first job, that heavy work has been done. So,
yeah, I mean, the number one thing I learned doing this exercise with your students is they underestimate their own skills and their own experiences. So I'll say, how many of you ever worked? And none of them will raise their hand, or maybe one or two. So how many of you ever babysat? How many have you volunteered? Because that's real work, and those are real life experiences that, the other thing I tell them is, as a freshman in high school, if you said, I have 6 years of experience at NASA, that would look real funny, so a long resume isn't appropriate for a freshman in high school. It's getting them used to talking about themselves confidently. And so that's one thing we've been doing. And then our focus for next year, in addition to that, is Bellows Falls has a uniquely excellent co-op program and job shadow program. We've we've provided some help to Mark in placing some of these students when he can't find that specific something. But in reality, it's already really high functioning for what we see in the county. And so what we're hoping to do with them is add proficiencies to some of those experiences. So making sure it's not just elective credit for some students. Students who maybe, Chroma now has this algebra class and calculus class that they're trying to get started. And so how could a student engage in that and it work during the school day? Mark would do everything he could to make that work out, but time is always limited. So that's the kind of support we'll help provide. Is really, what are the deeper connections we can make that's already going really well.
Just an FYI for you folks, we really kind of have a two-person team tackling that work-based learning experience. Mark handles it predominantly for the regular ed section of population, and Brenda Eno, who's one of our codas, has laid a lot of the groundwork here even before Mark was hired. So we've got a pretty, as Alec mentioned, a pretty robust set of opportunities for work-based learning for students.
Yeah, and part of this project is all about focusing on what each school and community and part of Windham County is unique and has to offer. I'm not here, you all have access to Springfield Tech Center as well, and that's a really unique and awesome experience too. And so the solution for Bellows Falls students who want to go right into the workforce, it's not the same as the Brattleboro students, and that's what I think we're excited about is, Mark can call us up or any of the counselors can call us up and say, we don't know how to do this, or how can we do that, or can you help us? And that's really the flexibility this program provides. The other thing, the less flexible but much more standard things that we'll be doing, Christy will just talk really briefly about how she created this scope and the sequence and what she'll be doing next year with it. Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. So this is our sort of overarching goal for Windham County, to have each of the schools go through a series of levels of career awareness and career preparedness, so that at the end, and this will be down the road, they will be Windham ready, and that will mean something to the employers in this community, right? So some of the activities are about self-discovery. For example, having students do interest inventories early on in 9th grade, or at some point even earlier, so that they can tap into things that they're passionate about, things that they think that they might enjoy, and then processing that to say, okay, well, I really enjoy doing these types of things. How does that relate to a career path? In the other areas, career exploration and preparedness. So a lot of the things that the employers are telling us is that they can train an employee once they're hired to do all sorts of different jobs, but some of the things that they're missing are those 21st century skills. And the arts department was talking about how they're tapping into some of those things with the mindfulness training and whatnot. Those things are happening within your school and within each of the subject areas. We want to make sure that every kid gets that opportunity to learn those 21st century skills. And then, of course, that relates to their academic and career planning. So some of the things that we are hoping to do next year is to provide some services that the guidance counselors have identified as things that they've always wanted to do, but just haven't had the time or the capacity to do, to kind of support this. So, for example, in the 9th grade and the 10th grade, we would want to do some of these interest inventories with the students. We would want to introduce students to career clusters, and specifically careers that are available within Windham County. And we're hoping to even bring in the McClure Foundation to kind of give us a little bit more information on that. And this will help kind of guide the students from an early age to make course selections and educational experiences that will lead them toward that path that they have decided upon. Now, I know that as a freshman, you'll have a great idea and you'll say, oh, this is definitely what I want to do. I want to be a scientist. And by the time you're a senior, things will have changed. But a lot of those core interests stay throughout the entire educational years. So we just want to make sure that the kids are identifying things that they're interested in early, and then making the choices that are appropriate to get them where they want to go. Some of the other things we were identified that would be interesting are to teach some professionalism classes, and specifically around body language, tone of voice, professional verbiage, and those types of things. And those would prepare the students then for interview skills. We'd like to invite in some HR organizations to help them prepare interview questions. And then one of the things that they're very excited about in the guidance department is having some mock interviews with the students. So having people from the community, professionals from the community come in and volunteer, and having the students actually go through an interview process a couple of times. We'd like to videotape that so that they can then process it afterward with a career coach to see, what they could do better. We'd like to do that in 10th grade and continue to do that in 11th grade so that they can get better. So by the time they're having a real interview, they're like, oh, I got this. I'm calm. I'm comfortable, right? So those are some of the things that we also would like to offer. And then additionally, we have some ideas, for example, in 12th grade, teaching some essential life skills. Those are one of the things that all of the schools have said. The kids get done with high school and they don't know how to sew a button, or they don't know how to, fill out an envelope. Yeah, I hear that all the time. So a fun activity that we could have would be a parent-led event where the parents would actually come in and teach those life skills, those various life skills that people have identified. So these are just some of the activities that the guidance department said, we'd really like to do this. We're open to other things as well as they arise throughout the school year. So.
And a reminder, this isn't necessarily things that aren't already happening somewhere in your school. I think the way we see it is the students who are lucky enough to take consumer sciences and to have some of these experiences, they get it when those bright students meet those bright teachers. The question is, how do we scale some of this? And then the other part is that now hopefully the use of this is the counseling department can check off everything they're already doing, and then there'll be these holes that they can really identify, so they know when to call us. So we're not guessing, do they need this? Are we just bothering them? Is this really what Bellows Falls needs? That's really what this tool is for, and then really identify how we're moving forward.
I know Hinsdale High School has sometimes worked with the Brattleboro Regional Vocational Center.
Sure.
And so you may have some contact with them. As a business owner in southern New Hampshire, particularly aware of how effective their ELO, Educational Learning Opportunities Program, is, how businesses compete for their students' achievements in that. And so I was wondering, have you some exposure to that program?
Yes, absolutely.
And good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, New Hampshire's ahead of us with proficiencies and ELOs. So learning from Hinsdale has been a great opportunity. That's exactly what we're really working with Mark on, and Bellows Falls, is they've gotten. So they're really great at job shadows, and this is where the semantics come in. A job shadow is usually a day, maybe 3 days total, where an ELO might be 1 day a week for an entire year, or a few days a week. And so the foundation here at Bellows Falls to get there is really strong, and that's why this is the only school we're really focusing on co-op or ELOs. They're exchangeable language. But yeah, you're spot on that we're looking across the river for.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to start on reports. Superintendent.
As usual, my report is enclosed. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out.
I have a reach out, I think.
Yep.
And I want to find it here. making note of the Wyndham Northeast Unified Union Elementary District. Chris, that's your report, isn't it? And there's language there which I think needs to be a little more accurate.
Which page you on?
On the bottom?
It's
Page number on the bottom.
this block here.
No, that's from, it's part of my report, but that's taken out of the update from the legislative update number 7.
I'm looking for, and I've seen it in here, Chris, your report about the organizational meeting of the Wyndham Unified Union Elementary
Is it
District.
the one that says on April 10th that the Athens, Grafton, Westminster held a transition meeting?
That's the one. And it's the last line, Chris. The meeting was recessed until there is a final ruling on the lawsuit against the State Board of Education. That language is inaccurate.
It was more the Attorney General, wasn't it?
Pardon me? Well, what the language should say, and I think this was what the motion was that the meeting was recessed pending a response from the Attorney General's office about the legality of the State Board of Education's move on November 30 to abrogate the Athens-Grafton contract. The suggestion that we're waiting for the outcome of a final lawsuit against the State Board of Education, I think that reads to most people as looking for an outcome of the lawsuit on behalf of the 30-odd school districts and other individuals and organizations against both AOE and SBE. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think that if it is interpreted at the agency state board level that we're stonewalling them because we're waiting for the outcome of the suit before we move, that doesn't do anybody any favors. And we're both well aware that the Secretary of Education has already reacted to the request for a ruling from the Attorney General. He acted by issuing his own response, quoting loosely from the language which was in the Attorney General's response to the lawsuit. But that does not constitute a response from the AG's office. And I'm really not trying to beat this up at length here, except for the fact that I think that Wyndham Northeast could very well get clocked if the impression is received in Montpelier that we're going to try to hold them off until the lawsuit's been heard by the Supreme Court, and it's not accurate. We're simply waiting on either a ruling or a response from the Attorney General indicating that he's not going to rule on the question of the Athens-Grafton contract before we bring the meeting back in from recess. And there's a small wrinkle, and that is that the only officer who can reconvene that meeting would be the only officer that was elected by the body, and that would be the moderator. So
okay, Dave. I think we got it.
I got my point across. Thank you, Molly.
Yes, thank you, David. I'm making changes in that.
Yeah, good. I appreciate it.
Anything else, Chris?
Nope. This week we have be attending the VCSEA VSA conference. So I'll be out on those days, but I will report back on how it went.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Principal's report?
Just going to remind you that June 12th is class night. That comes a little bit after our next potentially scheduled meeting, but just to make sure you get that on your calendars. 7 o'clock is when that starts, and then June 13th is graduation, 6:30. Keep your fingers crossed. By then, the cold and the rain will be gone. And if not, we'll be inside.
All set.
That's it.
Is there a student report?
No.
Edie?
Yeah. Well, we're getting closer to the end of the year. And right now we're looking at a surplus of about $63,000. We still have not unencumbered any POs that might not be used. We won't know that until we get closer to the end of June. But that's about 30,000 more than we thought last month, so
That's good.
we're still well in the black, so that's good.
Any questions for Edie?
With that, real quick, with that number that we voted on for summer recess funds, if something does come up, I mean, we do have the opportunity to have like a meeting. Like if you needed more money or something, I mean, there is that.
Oh, okay. No,
Or you think you're comfortable with that?
I think we're good with the 450.
That was my only
We
question.
went through, Christine went through and estimated payrolls and accounts payable. We do get a little bit of summer revenue, not a lot, about 100,000. And so, we should be okay until we start getting tax money and the rest of our special ed and all that other stuff that's coming in. Right now, the SU looks just over a break even, so there won't be a lot of money coming from the SU back to the high school.
Steve?
The 460,000 is after the 63,000?
The 450, we get almost no revenue during the summer. We don't start getting the rest of this year's money, as well as tax dollars to cover the beginning payrolls.
So the 63,000 just a book entry?
No, we'll use that too. But
So we're talking about needing 520,000.
well, no, we need 450, but we won't have all of the 63,000 until September. That's when we get the rest of it. It's weird because the school year's ended, all of our expenditures have come in usually by the end of July, but the revenue that offsets those expenditures don't come in until September.
So it's really a cash flow.
That's all it is cash flow.
Okay, is there any committees? On committee reports? WNESU board meeting review. Is that you, David?
Yes, I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version, Molly. There were two significant public session items. The first was a presentation from an organization called BFUHS, which had been hired by the superintendent's office to have a look at special ed programming across the district. We spent, I think, over an hour with BFUHS, and it was a real eye-opener. We found out that we have a number of programs which we should really be modeling across the districts, but as BFUHS referred to it, they appear in many cases to be siloed within specific schools. BFUHS urged us very strongly to try to cross-collaborate around different schools that are demonstrating best practices. We found out that we have a pretty high retention for special ed para-educators, the experienced ones, but we turn over the more junior special educators much more frequently, and that creates problems with continuity. There was also, I thought, an interesting comment, and that is that while most classroom teachers seem to embrace all kids in their classes, there are still some teachers who seem to favor the pull-out model with SPED kids, and that's not necessarily considered to be a best practice. I'm anticipating we'll probably hear more about BFUHS when the WNESU board meets in a week or so. The second major item was a discussion with the district's legal counsel, Stitzel and Page. There is some confusion as to whom Stitzel and Page does and does not represent. much of that confusion was generated by Stitzel and Page themselves. On April 8th, they issued an opinion to Grafton School Board that it would be an unwise and possibly even illegal practice for the Grafton School Board to sell the school to the town for $1. 4 days later, on April 12th, additional communication was received from Stitzel and Page addressed to the Athens Grafton Board Chair and the Westminster Board Chair, which said in pretty plain legal English that Stitzel and Page had ceased their representation of the Athens, Grafton, and Westminster districts retroactive to sometime in January, which they could not identify. Possibly, I think it was the same date on which we had our last joint boards meeting, which we should be probably scheduling it again before the end of June while we still have joint boards. So there was much discussion around who Stitzel and Page represented, who Stitzel and Page didn't represent, and who Stitzel and Page continued to represent well. And the consensus of that meeting was that Athens, Grafton, and Westminster needed to have a discussion with Stitzel and Page, but at the SU level, we were really quite happy with their performance. Then we also went into executive session to update negotiations. And I will simply add to that discussion that the teachers and the board negotiating committees met again this afternoon at 4:30, and I think, Chris, we put another date up there on the calendar, although I can't remember which one it was.
It'll be the dates that we have locked down. We're going to have on June 17th is when we'll reconvene with the board and the teachers, and then on the 21st, if we need to, we will have our first mediation.
Let us simply say that discussion is continuing, and we will keep you updated as appropriate. That's the SU, Molly.
Thank you.
Question. Why did Stitzel and Page dump the Westminster, Athens, and Grafton?
The stated reason was because Athens, Grafton, Westminster had all engaged outside counsel to advise them on Act 46 matters, and Stitzel and Page was uncomfortable about overlapping counsel issues. The irony is that on April 8th, they were still offering advice, and on April 12th, they announced that they had ceased their representation retroactive to January. Go figure. You need a lawyer to sort it out for you.
Thank you, David. Unfinished business is negotiations updates, but I think that David just did that for me. So we're going to go down to new business, and the only thing we got left on here is plans for a board retreat. Does anybody have any input on a board retreat?
Question?
Yes, sir.
Sounds like another piece that we ought to do is a joint board's invitation also as a, if our purpose is to continue our model of working together collaboratively with our joint boards, and June is the time to do it, issuing an invitation or at the very first joint boards meeting.
Are you suggesting to do that instead of a board retreat? Right now we're on board retreat.
Yeah, right now we're on board retreat. I was suggesting it needs to be under 9, under new business. I'm suggesting that David has just come up with the obvious fact that we also need to consider a 9 E.
So, Chris, help me out here, but by listening, a joint meeting should happen before the end of June, if we're going to have one.
Yep.
And we all know how tight the month of June is going to be with everybody. So do we bump a board retreat?
That would be up to the board. It's going to be difficult getting 2 in, so the board would have to decide if they want to move forward with both or prioritize.
Molly, I had originally requested for this to be on here. Board retreat. I just my view was to it doesn't hurt for any of us to get sort of a refresher course of, you know, what our roles are and what our roles are not. You know, for somebody to come in and speak, superintendent, you know, do a presentation or whatnot. If the board feels that it is not necessary, you know, then we don't have to keep talking about this. I just know for some time it has been a discussion. And again, it doesn't hurt for any of us to get sort of a refresher course on that. Also, you know, we are approaching summer, even though I don't think the sun is ever going to come back out. But this could go to the fall, you know, when we kind of reconvene into more. But who knows? I mean, it's up to the board. I just thought it would be a good idea to kind of get a refresher course, everybody. But if it's not necessary, then we can, you know, do the joint board or.
So, a couple things. This was in our packet, school board reorganization packet, last meeting. Really spells out pretty clearly what our job as board members are, which might be a real good refresher for anybody to look at if they need that. Go ahead.
I would just, I guess, going to point out to agree that a board retreat is often, I found useful, but not as time sensitive as the issue that David brought up of having our joint boards meeting. Both of them are ways of interacting collegially, in the case of the joint boards, with our entire district. June is the appropriate time, or has sort of before it's become the appropriate time for doing that.
Yeah.
I would say that might have priority over the board retreat. Not saying that we shouldn't have a board retreat, but that what we should do in June is that task.
Okay. So for now, we're not planning a board retreat. We're going to try for a joint meeting in June. Think you can pull that off, Chris?
I will.
Okay. Are there any appointments?
Nope.
No executive session? Director's comments. Mr. Fine?
All set.
Brenda?
I'm good.
Colin?
All set, thank you.
David?
Yes, I'm sorry, I have three.
We left your room.
Right.
And the first one actually bears on the next item, which is that the Athens, Grafton, Westminster districts will be taking action to advise the supervisory union how they wish to dispose of their portion of the VSBA dues. I would suggest that possibly we could get that on the next high school agenda so that we can address that issue as well. We did not pay the VSBA dues. That is a brief lead in to my second item, which is that I am headed, I'm not sure if you're headed, Chris, but I am headed up to Lake Maury Wednesday to get my legislatively mandated 8 hours of joint superintendent board chair training from the VSBA. It's a marvel of compression that the VSBA gets it in 6.5 hours, the whole thing done. And I am, under the current circumstances, actually going up as a member of the River Valley Technical Center because it proved to be a less expensive option. Nicole had offered me the training at the non-member rate to be established by the Vermont School Boards Association board at their May meeting, and I said just send the bill to Scott Farr.
So I'm not attending, so I'm trying to save people money.
Yeah. So I will be attending with Scott Farr, but the training will be the same. And if there's anything worthwhile comes out of it, I will report out the next time at this
Too
table.
bad you haven't had any experience as a chairman before.
I think with all due humility that I could probably do about half of the program because I've heard it so many times. It doesn't change much. But the law is the law, Mr. Fine, and I try to be somewhat respectful of it.
You had a whole course on that at some point, didn't you?
And then the last thing I want to report out on is it's already been a long day for me because I started in Montpelier at a board meeting. It's a very small board just at this moment of the Alliance of Vermont School Board Members, where we are keeping close watch on what's going on in the legislature. And in fact, on your behalf, we have engaged the services of a Montpelier lobbyist to keep an eye on the legislature and tell us what they're really doing. And we also have been providing substantial funding for the lawsuit which has been filed on behalf of the litigant school boards, several select boards, and a number of individuals. And that, at least in my judgment, important work is continuing, and I anticipate that there will be a filing before the Vermont Supreme Court sometime between roughly May 15th, which I believe is Thursday, and likely June 15th, to address issues which Judge Mello dismissed from his courtroom with prejudice. If you're curious, the numbers Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 5, and Roman numeral 6, but don't ask me what they are. I can only remember the Roman numerals. It ain't over yet, and I frankly believe it won't be over for quite a while because I think the legislature is going to have to fix some of their mistakes. But that's just my opinion, and thank you for the time, Molly.
My pleasure. Margot.
I just wanted to say how great it is to hear the departments present, and it's very helpful to hear sort of, beyond, sort of the more in-depth, presentations and the progressions that they're projecting, and then ideas for future. And great job with the.
And I have to apologize mostly to two of my staff members, but apparently I had two scheduled for the same evening. So if you saw Lily Hart and Julie Torres there patiently waiting, I honestly thought, and Lily, who also works with the union, I thought she might have been here for negotiations up to or something like that, and I didn't. Bottom line is, plan for foreign language the next time, because they are well prepared and ready to go.
Yeah.
So, but I publicly apologize to the two staff members for having them come out on a rainy evening when we didn't have a spot for them.
Okay, so I think agenda items for next board meeting, we have VSBA dues.
We have VSBA dues under 8A, and then under 7E we have the subcommittee and a policy committee update.
And joint meeting, will we get that on there, or you're just going to schedule one of those?
I'm just going to schedule it.
Perfect.
And foreign language department presentation.
Yeah, foreign language. Make sure.
If I can talk them into coming back.
I have to bribe them with.
I've got to go find some gifts.
Okay, date of next board meeting, June 10th.
God, June.
Any committee meetings will be determined. All those in favor, we're adjourned.
Aye.
I think you have a choice.
Thanks, Molly.
Hey.